What is up, guys? Ivan here with getivan.com. In this video, I want to show you guys a comparison of some B2B lead yields that are from a Scrapebox process versus a Netpeak checker process. So in previous videos, I was doing a little bit of comparison between Scrapebox and Netpeak checker here. And I was describing some of the challenges handling data using Netpeak Checker and some of the challenges that I've had with certain parts of Scrapebox getting hung up or not processing things properly. And so I've had two orders recently in the past week that I've processed, and I've processed them between these two softwares recently to try to figure out a way to incorporate Netpeak Checker into the process to improve what I've been doing using Scrapebox. And at the end of the process, I kind of realized, I didn't even necessarily need to get Netpeak Checker, because one of the necessary parts of being able to better refine the data for use with Netpeak Checker was to use the Scrapebox add-on for the page scanner to then look for, under the platform masks, to just do an email check. And normally I would grab the metadata and then do the email, just pull the email directly. So when I was using Netpeak Checker, I figured out that in order to drop the total size of the URL sample so that it's not too big and cumbersome to process, it was beneficial to use Scrapebox page scanner to look for the email on page, and then to roll it through NPC here and look for metadata and other fields, and then to crunch that down with the URL Explorer and the filter and so on and so forth. Pardon me. Well, it led to a variety of issues, and at the end of the day, I kind of realized, if I had just used the page scanner to look for the email, I could have dropped the URL sample, and in a number of cases, it makes it easier to grab check the metadata without it without it crashing so much. Like with really big samples, like I started with, and a previous order, like 700,000 URLs, like that's probably not gonna get crunched. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say it might not get crunched down enough to grab the metadata, but it might actually get crunched down enough. You ideally want to get somewhere under 100,000 so that the metadata grabber can handle it, because ever since an update with Scrapebox, this could improve in the future, by the way. This could get fixed if they decide to fix it. But for a period of time this year, there was an update, and Scrapebox metadata checker has not been working properly. Like it'll fatal error crash frequently if this URL sample is too big. And in the past, it used to be so great that you could do a million URLs and it would do a really great job at grabbing the metadata. And I would oftentimes do multiple sweeps. And Scrapebox is way faster. Like I talked about in the last video, it's like 10 times faster than NPC here. So at the end of the day, I kind of figured out you don't really need an NPC, but for my B2B list process, but there are a lot of other things it can do. It's much more sophisticated in terms of having a variety of criteria that you can load into a single spreadsheet. But of course, the more fields you try to pull, the higher the processing time, dramatically higher. And I noticed issues under the settings. Well, there's a setting here under general where you can do a data backup for every, I think it's set by default to every 15 minutes or something like that. And what I was noticing is that during that period of time, sorry about that, during that period of time, it would dial down the threads and it to stop the program, and then it would save the project. Well, I figured out the hard way that at some point in there, it was getting thread locked like Scrapebox, and it would be stuck on one thread. I came back and looked at a process at one point, and it had been running for like 12 hours, and it hadn't even processed 100,000 URLs out of the 700,000 URL sample. So that wasn't going to work. I figured out that I had to come in there and turn that off completely so that it could process. But that's also a risk because it means this thing has to run all day long and nothing has to go wrong. um, and fortunately, I was able to get through that. But at the end of that, I found out that, okay, even if this is a different job, but I had 700,000 URLs and it went over to 600, or it went over to 377,000. And then out of that, after I did my filtering, then out of that, I crunched down the emails to something like 90,000 URLs. So that's almost like 10% of the sample is, could have, if I had just done a page scanner run with Scrapebox, I could have dropped the sample size down, and then I could have grabbed metadata anyways using Scrapebox. But then I thought, well, NPC still gives you all these granular datas, right? Well, the problem is that when you export this stuff and you open this up into Excel, problem is a lot of these columns, they have unusual delimiters that are created either by the software or possibly by the metadata that these random site owners are using. And so there's this issue I can show you guys in my folder. Actually, it wouldn't be in here at this point, but there's an issue where if there's an improper character somewhere, it would skip over to another column. And so you'd have all these random artifacts. And actually, I think it's in this file. Yeah, it is in this file. And so if we were to look over here at I call this the bonus fields. Well, the bonus fields are actually in this file. This is a veterinarian job that I recently processed. This is the Netpeak checker file. And if you look, here's the URL column, right? Here's the meta title column. Here's the meta description and the phone number column. Well, if you're looking at these columns, you can see that there are very different pieces of data that have bled through to different columns. And so it doesn't line up properly. Like here are MX records. These are social links because for some reason, some sort of delimiter has bled through on that row, right? And it's not, the data isn't properly aligned. So here's the website, should be all the way back there. There's the meta title, and then the rest apparently has been cut off. NPC also imported 900 columns of blank space. And a lot of this stuff I've reported to the companies, just to keep in mind, guys, they've been very receptive and they've been gracious with my feedback. So I'm sure that we'll see changes. It's, even though I appreciate Scrapebox, it's not really the same experience when I make reports to Scrapebox support. They're oftentimes deny everything that I say, not to be ugly or rude. They deny a lot of things that I say when I present problems, but that hasn't been my experience with Netpeak checker support. They've been very gracious and they appreciate the feedback. So we'll have to see if they make some of those changes. Pardon me, but I sent them screenshots and examples of all these kinds of problems where the data is bleeding through. And I also looked at the original data set before email verification, and the same thing happened. So if you're confused at what I'm talking about, the issue with NPC is that even with data exports straight from the software, the rows have fields that are skipping over into other columns. Like here's phone numbers. And phone numbers are way back here. And there's just thousands, or certainly hundreds, but I would assume, every 10 rows or something, you have various misalignment. So that's a really big problem. And it pretty much means that it could just be one column, not totally sure, but it happens in the original data set without verification. So it's definitely something in there. It's probably the metadata, because if the site owners include some sort of weird character that normally causes is like a type of delimiter, then that could be the cause of why data is getting skipped over in various places. So if that's the case, then Netpeak Checker needs to include something to scrub all delimiters and then to insert commas in between the column fields. And that's something that you could maybe figure out, but you'd have to spend hours sitting around trying to figure out which delimiters are causing those problems. And that's actually also a problem whenever I scrape a large amount of Scrapebox data and I go back to paste the metadata. If there's a weird delimiter that's included in the metadata, then it can drop the it can it can drop the data by 1 to 10 or so rows. And if that happens, like even if it's one row, it's like finding a needle in a haystack to figure out where the misalignment has occurred. So pardon me, these issues with how data is aligned, it's pretty common between both softwares in different capacities. But even so, you can see in Scrapebox that our ability to create clean, aligned data is a lot better than it is even with NPC. And so with NPC, I've kind of decided that another problem, well, before I get to that, is when the emails come through. Let's see if I have this open here. If you take a look at the email column, like this job is still open. I haven't closed it yet. But when I close it, it'll be gone. Oh, here it is. When you take a look at this email column, see right here, it separates the mails it finds on page by a comma, which is a mistake. Scrapebox actually handles that better. And you can see there's at least a couple, maybe more than that. Yeah, sometimes there can be like 5 or even 7. There can be a lot of emails on one particular page. Pardon me. So if when they do that by a comma, that's a normal delimiter for spreadsheet programs to separate data into other columns. And so when that gets opened up in a spreadsheet program, what actually happens is it'll take the first email and then the rest of it just gets deleted. And in oftentimes it'll disappear, but sometimes depending on how the data is arranged, I noticed it would overwrite the URL and all the other data also. So yeah, I experimented with it and I tried to add several blank columns and that works. The problem is, even if you have emails on different columns, so then you have email 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you still can't verify it, because then that means you have to verify the first column, come in, shift over the rest, verify that one, shift over the. And to give you an example of what this looks like, take a look at this spreadsheet under extras. This is what it looks like. So column number 2 for emails had 1,000 mails. Number 3, 380, 4, 230, 5, 200, 6, 175. There's probably even more than that, but I only did like 5 columns. So you add all that up, and it's like, let's see, 1,000, 1,500, 1,700, 1,900, it's roughly 2K. There's like 2,000 emails there that are not getting included into this NPC data set, and it's too tedious to try to include them. And that's why Scrapebox handles mails better, because it gives you a separate line item, right? If multiple mails are found on one page, they will put it on a new line item, and they'll just duplicate the rest of the data on the other side. Of course, that might make the spreadsheet bigger, so of course, which could increase the processing time in something like NPC, which uses Java. It's much more resource intensive, much slower. Pardon me. But Scrapebox still handles it really quickly, much more quickly, even though it does that. And you can see in this data set, if we highlight the first column, we've got 3,700 mails after verification, right? And this one over here from Scrapebox, we got 5,600 mails. So I don't know how much. Let's look at 30. What is it? 3,600, 5,600. So 5,600. Let's see. No. 3,600 divided by 5,600. Yeah. So you're looking at roughly 35% more mails over here on the Scrapebox side because it includes all those other mails, and that's pretty close, right? We had about 2,000 extras, and that's about what we have over here on the Scrapebox side, roughly 2,000 extra mails. So obviously they're mails from the same pages, but you don't know which one of those is ideal if it's different people. In some cases, it might go to the same, redirect to the same mailbox, but the point is you're getting more valid mails, you know. So, and then we're covering a lot. I'm covering a lot of different things, a lot of different tidbits about comparing the results. But basically, NPC does allow us to get these other data fields. But the problem is you have tons of these random throws, right? It's very messy by comparison. So yeah, you get all this stuff in a single spreadsheet, but a lot of it's a hot mess. I mean, it's still somewhat viable. Like if we were to look at, let's say, Twitter URLs, for example, let's sort this from A to Z. Golly, look at all that. Like a lot of that stuff is misaligned, so let's highlight this column. So this is saying 900 have something in the field. Let's do a filter on this, and let's go contains twitter.com. Okay. And now it's saying 500. Yeah, so almost half, of that data was just a mess. Let's see how many total on the URL column, just out of curiosity. Well, of course, we dropped it down to my bad. That's what was I thinking? Because it filters the whole sheet, obviously. So, anyways, but yeah, you can kind of see like that's how messy the data is with NPC right now. So, but you're still getting, a lot of social profiles if you had a use case for such a thing. So, I still think NPC is a pretty cool tool. There's a lot that I still need to test, and a lot that you could base whole services around things that this tool can do. There's a lot of on-page stuff and things, um, and a variety of other utilities. And certainly, you can get those social links, and you can do that with Scrapebox also. But Scrapebox has a couple of areas that make it where there's serious thread locks, and they don't have like add-ons, uh, auto backup saves for some of that stuff. So it's not exactly the same. Now the thing about Scrapebox though too is you can create any custom page scanner type of footprint. So you could create. I mean, Page Scanner is like premium quality add-on, right? It's an add-on, but I mean, if they made a premium plugin to augment the capabilities of the Page Scanner, it would dramatically increase what Scrapebox is capable of doing. They just have to make sure that it can do backups properly, and But the Page Scanner is one of the greatest things ever. You could do a thing for a footprint for social links, and really quickly find which ones are out there, and at a very large scale if you needed to do that. And then you could come into this and pull them directly so that they're in a single sheet, right? If you needed multiples, um, no telling if the misalignments could occur though. But if you didn't put metadata in there, then maybe that would not happen so much, because I'm pretty sure random delimiters in the metadata are what is causing those misalignments. But I don't absolutely know. Okay. If you just needed one social profile, though, you could do the Page Scanner, and then you could probably just do a link grabber thing. There's like the grab check section for where is it? Grab links by crawling a site. Then there's also under add-ons, there's the link extractor. So Scrapebox has like so many different approaches. Like you can do the same kind of thing with different utilities within the software. So it's a lot more versatile. It processes more quickly. I mean, it has its hiccups, but of course, you can't get all that stuff in the same spreadsheet like NPC can do. But anyways, point is though that I still think there's a lot of pros and cons. I still think that NPC is viable. It just you have to work it just as much as you have to work with Scrapebox. Of course, the downside with NPC is the processing time makes it a lot more tedious to be able to test things really quickly. But anyways, how do I? Oh, I see. This window here is stuck. There it goes. But I guess long story long is in this one job process, I ran both of them, and Scrapebox actually gave me a cleaner, better yield for a B2B list output, you know. And then NPC, it still had, a spreadsheet with a lot of different fields. The problem is that there's significant misalignments. And so from a service standpoint, I would say I can't offer this data as a service because it's just too messy, you know. Now, I do need to do a test and see if I scrub the meta fields, maybe it would make this other data clean, So it might be that this other stuff is I can still get it all in the same sheet, but when I go to export, I just have to make sure to delete the on-page meta title and description, because you see the misalignment doesn't happen inside the software. It happens on export, and when you open that up in Excel. So we can still use the metadata to filter with filtering rules, but you need to right click and exclude that before you actually export the data. So those are my current thoughts. And I think emails are you just can't viably export that because there's no convenient way to drop them down to another row and then also copy the data adjacent, data from the previous place. Someone could write a script to do that, but I think that's just too much trouble, Pardon me. So I wouldn't do the phone numbers either because the commas. I wouldn't do the metadata, the phone numbers, the emails. But you could do a lot of this other stuff, the social media links, maybe this country thing. And this country thing comes from some service. I remember reading about that somewhere. There's some sort of service API where they get that, which then that could be useful. Like customers like to be able to scrub out foreign pages or include specific countries. And then there's a website traffic estimation, and that also comes from some API that they pull from. And I don't trust it a great deal. I think it's much better to use something like DOM Detailer and look at the referring domains to get an idea of the gravity on a site. Pardon me. But yeah, there's a lot of other things, a lot of other features inside of Netpeak Checker. So just going to take more testing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you guys that I've done 2 orders now, trying to compare things between Scrapebox and Netpeak Checker, and it looks like in the process of doing all that, I've learned that Scrapebox it's more prolific and it's cleaner at scale. It's also a lot faster, dramatically faster, and it's way better at handling data, way better. But it could be that if we can figure out how to clean this stuff up with Netpeak Checker, then some of this other inline data in terms of the spreadsheet export could be really, really awesome. Like I might be able to provide a special service that uh, is able to provide all these a lot of extra data inline. You know. Anyways, if you guys are interested in this, I have a link. I know I've really kind of given a mixed review on NPC so far, but I'm just really just trying to be transparent about it, you know. But let me show you my link. Here it is right here, hi.getivan.com/netpeak. And then if you use this promo code, you can get it for 25. You can get the max bundle for 25%. Make sure you look for max bundle. You have to go to the second tab of the buy area, and it's normally like $700 something dollars, but if you use this code, the first purchase that you make with this code is 25% off, so you can get it for like 550 or something like that. But it's a one-time lifetime fee, and it comes with Netpeak Checker and Netpeak Spider. So I still have a lot of things to test, and I need to do some things in Netpeak Spider. I need to test the search engine scraper and Netpeak Checker, schema markup validator. Um, there's a whole lot that this thing can do, and so it's going to be some years before I get through all that stuff. But anyways, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. Bye bye.